Shabbat Shalom. There's a traditional Jewish song which is attributed to Rabbi Nachman of Bretzlev that goes, Kol ha'ulam kulo, gesher tsar me'od, v'ha'ikar lo lefachid klal. The whole world is a very narrow bridge, and the most important thing is not to be afraid of anything. It feels, in a sense, like we're crossing a bridge right now, a bridge between the old normal and the new normal. Right now, we're in an interim stage. We haven't arrived at the new normal yet, but what we do know is that it'll be different to life as we used to know it. As much as this is true of the world in which we live, it's also true of Jewish life. Over the past couple of years, there's been a lot of discussion about changes, significant changes underway in the Jewish world. Temple memberships are not what they used to be. Jews are not identifying with Jewish institutions in general. There's a podcast called Judaism Unbound, and I've included a link below. Do yourself a favor and listen to the first episode of it. This podcast explores the changes that are currently happening in the Jewish world. In the first episode, recorded a couple of years ago by this point, the hosts Lex Rofberg and Daniel Liebenson propose a theory that Judaism is undergoing a major transition. While this feels threatening and scary to many, the hosts of the podcast suggest that periods of change almost always feel scary, almost like crossing a very narrow bridge. But they also point out that this is not the first time that Judaism has undergone major transformation. In its first iteration, Jewish practice and participation was based on offering sacrifices to God on an altar. And then when the Jews were exiled, they were thrown into absolute crisis, as the words of the psalm express the agony of uncertainty. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? Removed from the temple, removed from their home in Jerusalem, where sacrifices were offered, which was the only place that they knew how to encounter God, how was Judaism possibly going to survive? Any rational analysis of the situation would arrive at the obvious conclusion that it would not survive, it could not survive, except that it did, and this was thousands of years ago. The bridge, this point of transition from what was to what will be, gave birth to a new mode of Jewish life, a new mode of sustaining a relationship with God, prayer and Torah study. Well, Liebenson and Rofberg propose that we are crossing a bridge once again, except because we're still on the bridge, we don't know what stage 3, Judaism 3.0, is going to look like. And the interesting thing is that these theories were proposed before the COVID-19 pandemic began. If we collectively as a people had set out to cross a very narrow bridge before the pandemic, well, how much more so are we now standing in the middle of the bridge? There's a deep valley beneath us, and the wind is picking up. And I don't mean to suggest that tragedy is looming, but rather that this is a very uncertain time of transition, and it's natural to feel a little bit anxious. But there's no turning back, and neither should we stand still in limbo. We simply have to keep moving forward. There is no alternative. For us at Temple Beth David, what this means in the short term is that we need to make some brave decisions. In particular, We need to make decisions about when or whether to resume services, or in other words, whether or when it is feasible to try to resume services in the way that we used to have them until about 2 months ago. Is it even possible to go back to that normal? And furthermore, until such time that it makes sense for us to do that, what do we do in the meantime? Both of these decisions entail considerable risks. If we open too soon, we risk endangering your health and even your survival. If we stay closed without trying any alternatives, and I'm thinking about the kinds of things that we would never have entertained before now, we risk becoming irrelevant to you. If we do not have live in-person services, but instead possibly offer an electronic option for us to be together, to pray together, we risk alienating those of us who might see this as a major violation of Jewish law and tradition. None of these issues is simple. There is an opportunity cost to every one of them. But one thing seems absolutely clear to me, that not confronting them head on is by far the riskiest option of all, to the extent that not making a choice, not making decisions, is not even an option for us. So the pledge that I'm making to you now is that these choices and decisions are being explored today, right now. The 3 co-presidents of our congregation, together with a member of our community who is gaining knowledge and expertise about phased reopening of the workplace, together with me, we are in discussion about when and or how to reopen Temple Beth David. The conservative movement has just, in the past 24 hours or so, released a responsum, a teshuvah, a proposal based on their interpretation of Jewish law about alternative methods of joining together as a community for prayer services, both on Shabbat and also in anticipation of holidays such as Shavuot coming up at the end of May, as well as the high holiday services. I need to remind you that the conservative movement never has a monolithic approach about anything. Like every other movement or denomination, it contains a broad spectrum of approaches, and approaches to modernity, approaches to halakha, Jewish law. There are some conservative congregations and rabbis who agree with the findings of the newly released proposals, and there are some who disagree with them. But my pledge to you is that I, together with our ritual committee, are exploring these options, and we will communicate with you at some point in the next week or two our findings and our suggestions for the course we should take at Temple Beth David. So, no answers right now today, but please stay tuned as we prepare ourselves and we prepare ourselves to make a decision and also share decisions and choices that we make together with you in our community. For some, the opportunity to cross a bridge and anticipate change is nothing short of exhilarating. For others, it's exhausting, it's terrifying. And so let me leave you this week with something that I so miss from the time that we usually spend together singing and music. I'm not going to sing to you now on this video, but I've included some links below of some songs that speak to us about crossing bridges at difficult times. Click on them, listen to them, and also look out for that link for Judaism Unbound. Shabbat Shalom, Take care and be well.